Dr. Homebrew is brought to you by 5 Star Chemicals, providing safety and cleaning supplies for brewing, distilling, and winemaking at 5starchemicals.com.
Doctor, look.
Stand aside, nurse. I'm Dr. Homebrew.
Stand clear.
Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. This is Dr. Homebrew, the first show of the new year, which was 2020. And I'm pretty excited to be here with all of you. We have a few great beers, just a few, not a whole lot. I'm just kidding. We have a couple good beers here to drink for you tonight. Brian, what do we have even? What are our beers?
We've got a coffee milkshake IPA. I think that's our first one of those
That
ever.
sounds disgusting.
And an American...
I'm not going to lie.
American Stout as well. That's something you can get behind, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I know Dan is our milkshake guy, and no offense, Dan, but you're not my favorite person anymore.
Oh, man.
Right now.
You have strong opinions about Milkshake IPA, Jason?
You didn't know that about me? It's it's a new thing I'm trying to work on. But I'll tell you, one of the guests on this show, I believe it's either Chris coming up. No, I don't think it's Chris. I think it's Christopher, another Chris, sent us a bottle of Bourbon County... whatever the hell it is. Whatever the hell, Bourbon County.
Oh, wow, the Bourbon County Stout?
Yeah.
County.
From 2017.
Oh, badass.
So we got a bottle
Thanks,
of
man.
that.
All right. Let's drink.
That's pretty awesome.
And then I brought this 21A. It's a collab between Magnolia and 21A. It's cucumber and watermelon IPA.
All right.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah. I thought so, too. Sully gave it to me. He's like, look, either you're going to really like it or you're going to fucking hate it. So... it's one or the other.
You know, like for Strong Beer Week? Because they always do that Strong Beer Week thing.
No,
together.
this is a while ago. I mean, it's only 7% ABV,
okay.
so it's not terrible.
Well, one thing I do like, I'm not sure if I like that beer or not, but I like keeping my equipment cleaned well and sanitized.
Yeah, you talking about homebrew equipment or your personal?
That too.
I use exclusively, I make a paste out of PBW, and I rub it on my testicles. No, thank you to 5 Star Chemicals. You can go to 5starchemicals.com to learn everything you need to do to keep your junk, whatever it is, clean
junk.
and sanitary. That's right.
Please do not attempt anything JP is suggesting at all.
We're doing a Manscaped live read on this
That's
show,
true,
too.
yeah.
That's,
No, I talk a lot about just other ways to use PBW, and I don't know why. I think just because you can stretch that out to numerous different... I always like something that you can buy for one application, and you can use it for others. So today in my little coffee carafe, I just... shook a little PBW out. So in that, I get that like the 1 pound jar, or is it the 5 pound? I think it's the 5 pounder, the big one, the big 5 pounder. Yeah. And I just maybe make like a fingerprint size hole, and I just basically poke a hole with my finger, and that way I can shake it out.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of, scoop it or whatever.
Right.
So because I use it for so much stuff, because I'm not really homebrewing right now. So I just sprinkled a little bit, added some hot water in my carafe, cleaned that right up, man. Sat over all day, basically. It's good stuff.
I love that PBW, man.
Love that Joker. Hey, okay, well let's get Dan on the line, huh? All right. Hopefully he's not listening. It was like, you hated my beer? I don't even have it yet, dude.
No.
What's happening?
We also need his beer.
There we go.
Hello.
There we go. There we go.
This is United States calling. Are we reaching?
Hey, Dan.
Susan keeps hanging up.
Dan, are you there?
Hello. I hear him.
There's a problem with your microphone. Connect to another microphone
And that's a man
update your
answering.
audio drivers or try restarting your computer.
Well, that's cool.
What the
Can he hear us? No?
No.
Oh, man.
Hello.
Hi. We can't hear you. We can hear you, but you can't hear us.
Yeah. Well, I know you can't hear us, but we'll call you back. Do me a favor, Brian.
Yeah.
Nicecast is not optimized for your Mac and needs to be updated. This app will not work with... Oh, my God. Everything's happening. I don't know what's going on. This studio has
20s,
gremlins,
man.
dude.
The 20s. It's like the year 2020K.
All right.
Yeah.
Same. But both of the cameras I have for other Brian. Char Brian, not Cooper Brian.
Yeah.
Both of them are not working right now. They were working
rebelled
fine.
at my visage.
Okay.
It just
5
didn't
minutes
wanna-
ago.
Yeah. It's why 20K or whatever that would be right
It's
now.
something, man. All right,
Yeah.
well, I'll tell you what. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and see if the gremlins in the studio will allow me to work. And if not, then I think we have to go home, which would suck for everybody involved, except for probably Brian Sharp.
We'll just teleport the. You can figure out those things. I mean, just teleport the entrance right into the studio.
That's right.
They teleported some particles into outer space, dude.
They did?
Yeah, dude.
When?
They're working on quantum.
Why wasn't I
Well, I don't
notified
think it
of
was
this?
particles. I think it was the I think they
photon.
teleported the information. Like
A photon,
photon. Yeah.
So like a 1 or a 0, I guess.
You can have the quantum entanglement, and you use the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen wave to instantaneously transmit information about quantum states. But that's a different podcast.
I think it works like 30 times out of like 6 billion or something.
But it would take a patent lawyer to explain it all.
I'm still trying to figure out.
Dan, are you
don't want your
there?
lawyer to explain anything.
Dan, are you there?
Dan can't hear us.
Dan.
Dan.
Fuck. My life is the worst life.
Okay, we're taking a break. JP's going to curse up a storm, and we'll be right back.
Ma'am, I'll need to take your top off for this examination.
Oh, doctor.
All right, everybody, thanks for sticking with us. I apologize about that, but I think everything is, most things are figured out. We have Dan finally on the phone. Dan, are you there?
I am here,
Oh, thank God.
Nice.
I apologize, man. Thanks for, I know it's late where you are, and the last thing you want to do is get crank called by us.
No, we're all good.
All right, so we have a coffee milkshake IPA, and I have to ask why.
Why'd I brew it?
Yeah, yeah. What were you thinking?
What was the inspiration?
How high were you?
I was completely sober and had nothing in my system. It actually came from, I went up to Pennsylvania to visit some friends, and one of the breweries up there had it, and it was the most fantastic beer I ever had.
Really?
And
Wow.
I figured I need to try to recreate it in North Carolina.
Okay. Is this your first stab at the recipe?
It was, yeah. I've done a couple other milkshakes before. Like in the summer, I did a mango peach version, but this is the first coffee version I did.
Cool. Yeah, I liked the red card brewery label on that there. Is that your personal brewery?
Yeah, it's my wife designed the logo. It's just my
Cool.
homebrew name, I guess.
And then Brian has a question he wants to ask you.
I wonder what it is.
What question was this? Oh, yes, sir. We haven't done this for so long, and it's 2020, and Brian's
Forgot how to be
asked to
doctor.
be like, he's even mouthing the words like, you're going to ask him what club he's in. What homebrew club are you in? Or are you in a club at all?
I am a lone wolf. I'm not in any homebrew clubs.
So you're one of those guys on a watch list from the AHA or something then?
All right.
Awesome.
I have a question for you, Dan. Should we roll the bottle?
No, you do not have to.
It's not
Okay.
a Hefeweizen, man.
Wait,
Well,
is that a thing with milkshake IPAs, or are you fucking with them?
Well,
By proxy, messing with me too, because
there's a reason for my question. We'll get into that later.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's do that. So this is your first stab at it, and what was the brewery's name that you got this idea
It's called
from?
Breaker Brewing Company in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Breaker Brewing Company. Okay, I love
Breaker, yep.
it. Brian is pouring the beers now. Here,
Extra large helping for you, JP.
I'm passing that right over to Brian Shar.
Extra small helping for you with all the
Thank
yeast.
you very much. Brian Shar, why don't you go ahead and start us out, please?
All right. Yes, I'd be happy to. This is only the second milkshake IPA I've ever had. I had a pistachio milkshake IPA at Northern California Homebrew Festival. Gosh, was it year before last? Someone from, I think, Hetchy Hopheads had brewed it, and it was really, I think, a good introduction to that style. But neither here nor there for this one. Aroma, and keep in mind, we just poured this one here, but the score sheet is for a different bottle that I had judged a little earlier today. And if you give me just a second,
And when we
Little
right,
sample.
that's pretty similar to what the one I had earlier. So the aroma, the coffee jumps out just as soon as this beer is poured. In fact, when I was pouring this my home earlier, just pouring it into the glass, having my nose like 2 feet away. It's like, wow, that's coffee. So the coffee really jumps out at you, which is nice. It dominates the aroma. There's some green pepper vegetal that is pretty common to be associated with coffee. Was also present, kind of a medium level. The downside of the coffee being so prominent was that I didn't really get any hop or malt aroma, though off aromas either. But it's just coffee dominant. And for any variety of IPA, milkshake, or hazy or whatever, hop aroma is going to be required, at least at a low level. And it just didn't get the hop aroma. So I gave that 6 out of 12 for aroma. Appearance, large head, it's off-white and very persistent. There's some haze from hops. I wouldn't call it a hazy beer. The sample that, we're all just kind of looking at it and pointing. The sample that we just got poured actually has some quite large floaties in here. So I think it was the genesis of Brian's question, and we can you can chat about that when it's his time. It looked like little hop leaves or something in there to me. So I'm going to guess, and we'll talk about your recipe later. I'm going to guess you dry hopped with whole cone hops. Colors medium gold, appearance 3 out of 3, flavor. Just like the aroma, initially the flavor is coffee. Coffee dominates all the way through the beginning, mid palate, and finish. And the finish is actually remarkably short. I was kind of surprised about that. This beer is really well attenuated, which I really like. But the downside of high attenuation can be a finish that's just done almost immediately. And that's kind of what I think this beer has. Medium bitterness, I get no hop flavor, low malt flavor that kind of comes out as it warms. Balance is to coffee all the way through. And what I didn't perceive at all was any sweetness or lactose or what have you. Admittedly, I don't have a huge amount of experience with the Milkshake IPAs, but one of the distinguishing factors of the Milkshake IPA is the use of lactose or some other non-fermentable sweetener to give you kind of that unfermented, unfermented is the wrong word, to give you some sweetness that doesn't ferment out. So flavor, gave it a 10. Mouthfeel, this beer had medium body, low carbonation, really no warming. It lacked the creaminess expected from a Milkshake IPA. I mean, this is partly why you have the lactose or maybe some other ingredients are going to give you that smooth, creamy mouthfeel, and that was just lacking here.
Yeah, I was missing that. That was basically what I noticed right out of the jump. It was dry and not very soft and creamy, I guess, like right. those beers are supposed to be.
Exactly. Totally agree. No astringency, which was good.
3
out of 5 for mouthfeel. Overall impression, I think this is a flavorful beer with excellent attenuation. It's well fermented, but it's lacking both the hop flavor and aroma that an IPA needs and the creaminess and sweetness needed for the milkshake version. I would definitely brew this again, especially if you like this style, and if you had the one at Breaker that was your favorite beer you've ever had, definitely do it again. But I would back off, probably 30% on the coffee, add some more aroma and flavor hops, and definitely add some more lactose next time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even something like little oats, something like that to give you maybe some of the mouthfeel. Like a milkshake, but I think this is well done trying something that's really kind of difficult, and as much as people talk about it, people haven't. I've rarely encountered a homebrew example of a milkshake IPA, so good on you for trying something different and complex. I gave this 27 total, which is a good score.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go, Brian. What do you think?
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So when I cracked the bottle, this one it actually started creeping up into the neck a little bit more. There might be some. I don't remember that happening when I judged the one last night, but
it didn't happen to mine.
It didn't happen to mine last night, but this one was creeping up into the neck a bit. I think the first one I opened had a little tape around the cap too, maybe to try to keep oxygen out. I don't know if that's going to do that.
I appreciated the creativity.
It's creative, yeah. But if oxygen's going to get in there, I think it'll pass through the tape. I don't know what the...
It was electrical tape, so you never know.
Electrical tape. Maybe it would protect it a little bit. I'm not sure. There are some brewers that take paranoid to a whole new level, and I kind of worry about things like that too much myself sometimes. I'll do paranoid weird, rituals as I'm brewing or whatever. But anyway, a nice looking bottle, and it had a nice hiss when it opened up. It was, again, in the nose, just low kind of malt and hops behind a big green pepper note up front from the coffee. It's a kind of a sharper coffee aroma, as Brian mentioned. The hops are low, just a little kind of fruity hop in there maybe. Not particularly, a little citrusy perhaps, but I'm not getting anything specific like tropically or mango, or there's just kind of a little lime or a little generic citrus. Maybe even a little earthy kind of. It's hard to detect because it's hiding behind that coffee there. There's no in the nose too. I was looking for a hint of something sweet because I'm thinking milkshake. I want a little sweetness in the nose. I'm not getting anything that's hinting at sweetness. But seemed fairly clean. There was no DMS or diacetyl. But yeah, just kind of missed the style for, should definitely have some hops in there. The esters are kind of low. It's not a super fruity beer. And, these beers are known for being juicy and kind of, okay. It was like, well, that wasn't quite what I was expecting, but it does not smell bad at all, I would say. It's, appearance-wise, I found just a slight haze, and I was expecting more haze. The beer's kind of golden colored, has a low whitish head that sticks around fairly well, with mostly finer bubbles. But I was looking for a little bit more haze. It's not milkshakey looking. I mean, some of those milkshake beers can just look like a milkshake. And I likewise have not had extensive experience with them. I don't really seek them out, but I would expect it just to be a little more, thick with haze. Flavor-wise, as expected, that coffee comes right out. It's kind of a biting green pepper-like coffee impression dominating the beer. I believe a green pepper would be kind of a phenolic flavor. I suppose you get some phenolic from the hops too, but I'm not getting much hop in here. Just that green pepper dominates. The sweetness is low. I likewise wanted higher, kind of medium low bitterness. And it's definitely, it seems, I would say, balanced to the malt, if not, to the coffee, as Brian said. But yeah, just if you're going malt to hops, it seems maltier than hoppier. Almost no obvious hop notes. And they may have faded. I'm not sure, the age on this beer when it was packaged, but we'll talk about that. We are in a new year here, and so it might have been floating around for a while here. But the malt is a lightly sweet, kind of bread-like component. And I guess it finishes semi-sweet, but it falls far short of what I would expect from the, a lactose-filled milkshake IPA. And needs more hops as well. So mouthfeel-wise, medium-bodied, medium-low carbonation, no obvious warmth, no astringency, but it's a bit biting nonetheless, probably from that phenolic pepperiness in there. Just a little bit of a bite and some harshness to it. All the same, it's a drinkable beer with a few actual flaws or defects. It's just the way that coffee is expressing itself is, A, it's too high compared to the base style, and B, it's coming across more harsh. And we'll let JP talk about coffee additions and how to do all
I am the expert.
How to do that properly. We always rely on him for that.
What'd you give it?
I gave it a 26. I think it might be either too aged or the hops have just faded out. I don't know. I'm having trouble getting to Milkshake IPA with this.
Yeah.
It's an interesting beer nonetheless. So just mostly missed the style. The 26 is not because of major flaws.
Yeah,
so
I
really
agree.
Try again.
Yeah, not to put a fine point on it, but I also got a real harsh bitterness out of it too. Like it's an aggressive bitter, and I think these beers aren't supposed to have that. So I feel like either something was lost in translation, or Dan was taking a good stab, and I think he got most of the way there. So
I think it's coffee bitterness.
Let's talk about him like he's not here. Dan. What's going on, man?
Yep.
You want to run through the recipe real fast, and then we'll get to some questions and
Sure.
all that kind of stuff. Thanks.
Yeah, the recipe was 35% two-row, 26% Maris Otter, 13% honey, 9% lactose, which turned out to be 2 pounds, 9% of flaked oats, and 9% of flaked wheat as well. And then the hop additions were an ounce of Northern Brewer at 60, 2 ounces of Cascade at 60, 3 ounces of Northern Brewer at 10 minutes, 2 ounces of Cascade at 5 minutes, and then an ounce each of Northern Brewer and Cascade at Flame Out.
Where did you get that recipe from?
I kind of built it myself. The problem was those weren't the hops I wanted to use. I wanted to use Cascade and I think Citra and Simcoe, but my local homebrew shop didn't have either of those, so they just substituted Northern Brewer on me.
Yeah, because that's one. Two things that stand out to me. One is the honey. I think you can kill the honey out of that.
Honey is just going to dry out.
It's going to dry it out.
It's
going
to fight against that lactose.
Right. And then part of these milkshake. So here, actually, let me ask a question: is milkshake the same as New England IPA? Is it any IPA and milkshake IPA? Are these technically the same? What's the differentiation? Because I don't actually really know.
Yeah.
Do we know that in 30 seconds or less?
Milkshake's going to rely more heavily on the lactose and try to give the impression of a thick, chewy, kind of milkshakey take on beer. There's also beers that taste like kind of creamsicles, where they go with the really fruity direction, and
because that's what I think of in any IPA. So it's basically
any IPA is going to be quote juicy. And it's not necessarily going to be creamy. It's going to have to be a silky mouthfeel, but it's not the idea. Just like Brian was saying, it's going to lack the lactose and maybe the body.
Yeah,
and a milkshake doesn't have to be hazy, I don't believe.
I think it does. I think that's part of it. I don't know.
It's not in the guidelines.
I think it needs to be a little bit hazy.
There's no guideline for milkshake IPA, but there is. They have a tentative one for New England IPA. But I think milkshake they can use vanilla, and they can create. They want to create kind of creamy, full bodied texture like a milkshake. So.
And what's interesting is
bold opacity.
The first thing was the honey, like I said, was going to dry out. But second is the hops. I think the hops play a big part in these style of beers. So and I know you said that your homebrew shop didn't have it, and that's totally fine. I've messed around with recipes before where the hops weren't really the ones I wanted to use, but I just was focusing on the grain bill anyways. But I think for this beer, I think maybe you should have waited for the juicier ones, I guess, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned Northern Brewer, and I totally get that now because it just blends with the coffee so much.
It definitely would, right? Because the tannin, the sort of a woody, feel, and I think would accentuate some of those coffee tans. Let's talk about your coffee real fast. How did you do that?
What I did was I took 4 ounces of an organic, what brand was it? It's Jim's Witch's Brew organic coffee, and I coarse ground it up and then just added it to the fermenter for 24 hours after a cold crash.
Yeah. Do you know what roast it was? Like what?
It was a dark roast.
It was a dark roast. I would not have guessed a dark roast on that. Because typically for me, like the lighter roast coffees give that kind of green pepper thing. So, and I know a lot of people have had success with the coarse ground, adding the grounds to it. I never did. I would make a double strength, batch of coffee.
Cold brew
cold brew, and then just pour it in. That's
gotcha.
That's
keep the grounds out of the beer.
Yeah, and that's typically was going to be my like go-to answer, but on the session, specifically the past couple of years, we've had a few breweries that do coffee additions different ways, and they all come out really, really good. So, who can really say? But try making a batch of cold brew with that, like double strength concentrate, and adding it in next time, or make a little tincture so you can add it in and try your coffee additions different ways, so you can get rid of that green pepper, because it does sort of distract from any hop aroma you might have had.
Okay.
Were there dry hops? Did you mention any dry hops?
No, there was no dry hops in
Right. So, yeah, the other thing I would say, too, is you had a lot of bittering hops, and a lot of the New England IPAs will rely on solely Whirlpool additions and beyond, so not even adding any hops to the 60-minute boil. If any, just a pellet or something to, help with the hop break. But it's, beyond that, it's just going for aroma only, and you get some bitterness out of that, too. In a Whirlpool, you'll get a little bit of alpha acid conversion, but it's minimal, and it keeps it soft, keeps it under control and less bitter than this one is. I think that some of the bitterness is coming from the hops, and not just the coffee.
Yeah.
What about water? Did you do any chloride additions or any water treatment? Do you know what your?
I did not yet. The only thing, I've just started getting into the water chemistry side of it. The only thing I did was run it through a charcoal filter.
Right. Okay.
It's just regular city water from my
regular city water. So it's probably more of a sulfate-heavy water mix, and to soften up these beers, a lot of times what they do is to go for like a 2-to-1 chloride to sulfate ratio. So if you're, just do the water math, and if your sulfate's at 35, go for 60 something with the chlorides, and the chlorides just accent the malt smoothness and richness, and kind of play off the hops a little bit too. I think they just let the hops shine without being harsh and biting. Whereas if you have a really sulfate heavy water or a Burtonized water, the hop bitterness plays a lot differently, more like an English pale ale, kind of a crisper, rougher bite to them. So. Yeah, work with the water chemistry too, and that's another trick they use. There's some good articles about brewing these things out there, and talk to the brewery. Sometimes they're pretty open about sharing some of their fun little secrets or what they do. And,
absolutely,
yeah. A lot of times you get a lot of good info there.
Quick question
do you think
about
age would have anything to do with this too? Because it was brewed on September 29th.
Yeah. Are you tasting one with us now by chance?
Some of it.
No, I actually ran out of it after all my friends drank it on me.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but what do you think? 10%? 20% maybe?
September?
Yeah, it's not that far away.
Well, yeah, I mean, these are you want to worry more about freshness with these than with other beers if you drink it. Within the first 1 to 1.5 months, it's going to taste a lot better than it will 3 months down the road. So that could very well be detracting you to it, in my opinion.
You got to try it again because, honestly, Dan, before the show started, actually, when the show started, I was told that it was a coffee milkshake IPA, and I threw up in my hat. But drinking what you have, it's actually a combination that I can understand now. I can understand how that would work. So I really kind of want you to brew it again and send it in because I want to taste how this works because I see it.
Okay.
I see it, and I want to be wrong, which is I've never said that before.
Yeah. So you did good with the oats and the wheats. I would drop the honey and the early hop additions and just dump everything in the last, in the Whirlpool.
Yeah, change it up a little bit. Do you have any questions for the guys, Dan? Anything you want to get over?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
You guys answered everything I had.
Hell yeah.
All right.
That's what we like to hear.
Well, thanks for sharing. It's a fun beer to try. And I find these beers to be challenging, too. It takes a couple tries sometimes to get them right. And my wife loves the hazy beers, but, I'm still working on getting one to her particular taste. Just give me the field work. Give me this in-house.
All right, Dan, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. And, let us know for sure when you take another stab at it.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, man.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks.
Yep.
Oh, what we didn't talk about is yeast, did we? He didn't mention yeast. He didn't talk about it.
Oh, shoot, no.
Damn
Call
it.
him back.
Oh, well, yeah. Hey, Dan, leave me alone. I'm done talking to you guys. All right, we're going to take another break, everybody, which is my favorite segment of the show. And we're going to get Chris on the line, and he's going to tell us about his American Stout, which I love American Stouts, baby. I'm on the Stout hype train. I've been buying Sierra Nevada Stout. Because that is out now, and it's very delicious.
Is that out at, the local retailers now?
Yeah.
Awesome. No, I love Sierra Nevada Stout.
No plug needed, baby.
I haven't bought that at, the Safeway for, 20 years, man. I remember getting that at, the Safeway at Huntington Beach in the 90s.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Man.
All right, everybody. Hang on. We'll be right back. This is Dr. Homebrew. Don't go anywhere because we can't either.
Hello, fellow BNers. This is Sully from the 21st Amendment Brewery located in San Francisco, just 2 blocks from Giants Park. Before Nico and I opened the 21A and before I was a professional brewer, I homebrewed on my small 4-burner apartment stove in a back house in Santa Monica, California, making my extract brews before graduating to the daunting idea of all-grain brewing. Homebrew books and information was hard to come by back then. The internet hadn't been invented yet, along with other things we take for granted today, like electricity and potable water. One thing I wish I had back then when I was learning was a radio show that could teach me the ins and outs of brewing and answer questions that I had about homebrewing, a resource for making great craft beer. The 21st Amendment Brewery is excited to be a proud sponsor of Dr. Homebrew, a great show that teaches you what you need to know about making incredible beer. Good stuff. Listen up, you might learn something. I certainly did. And thanks for your support. Tasty Crack Games.
The leader in affordable, high-quality kegerators is here. Introducing Komos, the kegerator designed with serious beer drinkers in mind. It features an all-stainless steel draft tower, a major upgrade over traditional chrome-plated brass towers, and Komos keeps your new tower cold with their air-cooled tower fan, wrapping your beer lines in frigid coolness. Your beer is poured from innovative forward-sealing faucets that don't leak, so they stay cleaner for longer. Dual gas inlets on the rear of the fridge allow you to run both CO2 and nitrogen gas. Serve your beer with CO2, serve your kegged wine, or even cocktails with nitrogen. The digital temperature display has the largest range available, allowing you to use the Komos Kegerator for fermentation if you need to. And now Komos Kegerators ship with duo-tight draft fittings for that click-to-connect assembly we've all dreamed of. Buy direct from KomosDraft.com and receive free shipping on your order. That's KOMOS Draft.com.
Now serving patient number 189. Number 189 to the counter, please.
Now back to Dr. Homebrew.
All right, everybody, thanks for sticking with us. This is Dr. Homebrew, and what I should have done during the break, and I did not, is dial up Chris, but I'm going to do that right now. And you said, Brian, that we got the answer on the yeast.
Yeah, he used the Safe Ale 04, the S04, the English ale yeast. So.
Okay. See, that's what I don't understand. Should it have been like a more New England IPA yeast? Or,
yeah, I mean, a lot of people use the London 3 or the Fog or
should it be
Barbarian.
that? Because I think SF04 is, what is that?
It's an English
Is
ale.
04 English? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a little malty, but still will dry it out maybe a little bit more than you would want in a beer light. Anyway, We're moving on here. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How's it going, guys?
Hey, good, man. How you doing?
Good.
Good, thanks.
Awesome. Well, we have an American stout. I'm really excited for this. I was telling the boys I love me some stouts. I'm hype for the stout beer, man. Have you brewed this beer before?
I actually brewed some sweet stouts in the past, and I've never done American stout, so I figured why not give it a shot.
Cool. Any particular American stout that inspires you or you wanted to emulate?
No, I actually kind of just took my base recipe of the sweet stout and then kind of read the style guidelines and try to make an actual American stout. So I wasn't really trying to go after anything other than just kind of the flavor profile and what the style guidelines said. So kind of just took it from there.
Nice.
De-sweetened it. Yanked out the
pretty
lactose.
much,
Yeah. Just a little bit. Oh, thanks, Brian. All right, we're pouring it off here a little bit. Here, let me hand that to Brian Schaar. And Brian Cooper, why don't you start us out, please, young man?
All right. Thank you. Yes. A nice hiss when we opened it up. It's a pleasant, rich maltiness to it with a pretty big roast up front and a light chocolate nose below that. A low citrusy hop, I would say, kind of out of the way, but appropriate level. These can have a little bit of hop to them. Medium-low fruity esters, kind of dark fruits, not very intense at all, though. And it's somewhat coffee-like in here. It's just kind of clean and inviting. But I also found kind of some hints of a little bit of like charcoal, a little sharper ashiness, not super intense in the nose. In the appearance, very dark brown beer, brownish black pretty much, and nearly opaque. Seems clear at the corners, though. You can actually see some little garnet highlights if you kind of put it up to the light. Mostly fine, creamy-looking foam stand, and kind of looks like it should, so I gave it a 3 out of 3 for appearance. Getting into the flavor, very bold, roasty, massive malt with a somewhat of ashy, biting note. Getting bitter chocolate and coffee, low hop bitterness. The beer seems cleanly fermented, so nicely done there. It's definitely balanced to the malt and those roasty malts especially. It has a smoky charcoal-like character that's lingering into the aftertaste that to me is detracting a little bit. But otherwise, it's in the territory for American Stout. It's just a little too big and bold for what you expect there. And mouthfeel-wise, medium-bodied, medium carbonation, a bit of a biting astringency from the darkest malts. It's just not very smooth or creamy. And there's some hints of a little alcohol warmth there. It's possibly up there in the alcohol, but not super strong.
Like me.
Yeah.
Not super strong like me.
But, it lets you know there's a little alcohol there. It's not a wimpy beer. Overall, it's a very tasty and very big stout. But I would say you just need to back off of that roast and some of the other darkest grains a fair amount here, or else just go big and imperialize it. It's a very, it's a good base, and you brewed it cleanly and brewed it well. I could see this standing up to more alcohol without adding a lot more roast or anything. But it's kind of a fun beer to taste. It could stand up, to a lot more alcohol, and you'd have to just, of course, use more yeast too if you went that direction. Added more base malts, or got it up there gravity wise. Yeah. That's where I would suggest going with this one, just because it's so rich and so strong, it could stand up to that. But if you want to turn it into American Stout, definitely back off those. I think your hops are in a decent place. Everything else is decent. It's just that roast is super sharp. And watch out also for your mash pH and for over sparging. If you're doing all grain, you want to be really careful not to have all those acidic grains drag your pH way down and just extract the harsh tannins that you can get from some of those richest malts. But nicely brewed and nicely fermented, it seems like. And
what do you give it?
I give it a 31.
Nice. All right, Brian Sharp.
Yeah, I love American Stout. This is one of my favorite styles, and I typically, I didn't do it this past year, but I'll do a Christmas Stout typically every year, which is an American Stout. So I've done this a lot, and I've encountered some of the pitfalls in years past you can do when you're brewing this.
Yeah, I will say that as a novice home brewer, novice is when you're dumb, right? As a novice home brewer, like people tell you, just if you can't really do anything, brew a dark beer. Brew a stout or a porter. They're much easier to deal with than like a pale ale or an IPA, and that is not true. They're equally as challenging, if not more challenging, because you have more ingredients that can stick out a little bit if you got to go overboard or whatever. So it's not easy.
There's a lot to hide behind, but
there's a lot to hide behind, and that's why. Because at more beer, that's what we would always recommend. Just make a stout or a porter for your first beer, because you can hide a lot of your fermentation issues, and you can. But when you're building recipes, that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, and I'll play along with our derail here for a second, and I agree with that when you're making a traditional like English stout, because there's not much. It's English ale yeast. It's supposed to be fruity, so it plays to the fact that beginning homebrewers don't have temp control.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of hops, and what hops there are your Fuggles, yeast, EKG, stuff like that goes with the dark malt that they've learned from hundreds of years of experience. But some of the issues you can have with an American Stout is much more challenging, I think. And part of it comes from the fact that dark malt and hops, and specifically roast malt and some hops, do not play well together.
Right.
In my experience, none of the C hops work with roasted malt. Centennial, Cascade, Columbus.
Yeah,
I have terrible, and Brian's looking at me like I'm high, but as far as he knows, I don't know. But
I think that's just his look. He has resting high face.
I liked hoppy beers, and then early in my brewing career, I wanted to make a stout, and I just said, "Well, what if we hop it up? Let's make it really hoppy too, and see what that tastes like." bad idea.
Yeah, and I've had like a lot of practice, sort of fine tuning. Like I'll just my American Stout, I tend to go heavy on the chocolate and pale chocolate malts, and I just keep kind of making it more like the chocolate as the years go by. And I've tended to land on like the nugget type hops. Avoid the sea hops. I haven't played with some of the newer school, New Zealand quote tropical fruity hops. But it's going to require a lot more experimentation when you're designing a recipe for American Stout, when you're trying to pick out a hop flavor and aroma, because so many of those hop flavors do not go with roast flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the resiny bite kind of fights against or clashes with that cocoa-y and roasty bite. It's too much.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
All right, Brian.
So talking specifically about this beer, aroma, definitely get a lot of dark malt, roast malt at a high level. I got kind of a medium level of floral hops, no diacetyl or off aromas. I did get a slight rubber character. And kind of going to my point, this to me is something that you get with some, when we get to your recipe, I'll be curious what hops you used. That kind of a little bit of a hint of a tire rubber type of character comes from hops and roast not playing well together. And that to me is kind of a byproduct of hop selection with roast. And kind of, I'll hold off on that comment to the overall impression. Still, I gave it 9 out of 12 for aroma. I thought it was nicely done. Appearance, 3 of 3. Head is dark brown and persistent. Excellent clarity to the extent you can tell in such a dark beer. Color's dark brown. If you hold it up to the light, if you casually look at this beer, it's black like a stout should be. So well done. Flavor, initial flavor is dark malt and roast malt. With some hop bitterness, just immediately almost aggressive at a high level. And I'm not getting that quite so much in this sample.
Okay.
But I still get it. Actually, I still get that quite a bit. It was maybe a little more aggressive in the bottle I had at home, but it's almost an aggressive bitterness at a very high level.
It's a bitter chocolate and coffee coming through.
Yeah, exactly. I get a little bit of a little bit of a rubber taste, very low, not as much as I would get that in the aroma. There's a little bit of that there. Again, I believe that's an interaction of the hops and the roast malt. Very well attenuated. I really love the attenuation on this beer. It's very dry. Finish is long and balanced toward bitterness and roast. So 12 out of 20 for flavor. Mouthfeel is medium warming, body is medium, low carbonation, not really as creamy as you might want a stout to be, but this is an American and not a British stout. I don't think it has to be creamy. I get a slight astringency, and it may simply be it may not be astringency. It may just be kind of a byproduct of the very high bitterness and the roast malt that gives a perception of astringency. And I don't think it's the I kind of wrestled with this because astringency is a very specific mouthfeel term that is different from a perception of a lot of roast or a perception of a lot of bitterness. But still, I got a perception of a slight astringency from this beer.
These beers can have a little bit of roast-derived astringency, but it shouldn't be too much. You got to keep it restrained. I'd say this is a little too much.
Yeah, thanks for helping me out there, Brian. But I give 4 out of 5 for mouthfeel. Overall impression, I gave it a 7. It's a clean beer. It's well attenuated, excellent fermentation. But I think, as I was talking about earlier, hop choices in a dark beer with a lot of roast malt are really hard, and they require a lot of experimentation to just figure out what works. It's not even what I was talking about before is the varietal in combination with the roast malt. It's the fact that the roast malt has a bitterness to it on its own that when you're building a recipe, that roast malt doesn't get there's no IBUs associated with it, but it does give you a perception of bitterness. And I think if you bitter the beer in accordance just with what ProMash or Beersmith or one of the calculators will tell you, you'll get an IBU level that's in the range for the style, but it may not. The beer overall may end up having a perception of bitterness that's higher than you might want. And I think that's kind of where we are right here with this one.
Okay.
I would back off on the bittering hops. I'd back off a little bit on the roast malt. I would, just because it's what I do. I love some pale chocolate malt in these. Maybe I'll be curious if there's already some in there.
Pale chocolate's the only chocolate malt you should ever use in your entire life. I'm going to say that right now. I'm going on record.
I disagree with that, but not strongly.
Well, that's okay. You're wrong.
I would play with hop varieties, but I think overall it's a good beer. I gave it a score of 35, which is in the very good range.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here drinking it. It's got a couple of minor issues, but I'd call this a very good beer.
It's clean.
Yeah. I would give it a 36. I don't normally judge beers, but I really like this beer.
But when you do.
But when I do, I give them 36s. I'm not going to, again, put a fine point on it, but, the head is amazing.
It is, yeah.
So I think it's
really, really
it's a
great.
very, very well-made beer. But, yeah, like the guys are saying, and you probably know, there's a little bit of a recipe issue. I think it's just a little too aggressive. And maybe that's why I don't like American stouts so much, because they tend to sort of be on the aggressive side with the roasted malts, and that's why my oatmeal stout never really does super well beyond a 36 or 38 in competition, because it doesn't have any roast, and that's what I like about it. I don't really like stouts with a lot of roast, but this is pokey and edgy a little bit. Yeah. So if you can rein that down a tad, because there is that burnt rubber. It's almost like when someone peels out on their tires. It's like smoking rubber.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that is more tied to the roast malt than anything. So that's my repetition of what everybody else said.
We're all scoring it in the very good range of 30 to 37.
No, I think it's it's very good, Chris. Thank you for sharing.
Excellent. It's just mostly just balanced stuff.
Yeah, there's some easy. I think there's some easy paths here to getting this stuff 40 plus
for sure. Chris, what's the recipe?
All right, well that's good. It's kind of funny. You guys nailed a lot of pretty much the recipe in itself. So
we're professionals.
It's a 2.5 gallon batch. I do have the Pico Brew, the Cymatic.
Oh wow,
nice.
So I did 7.5 pounds of Maris Otter, a half pound of American roasted barley, a half pound of American Crystal 40, and a half pound of American chocolate malt. I didn't do the pale chocolate. Sorry, JP.
You got to do it, man.
I couldn't find it. I know. I got to try it out.
That British pale chocolate is just so smooth, man. It's so smooth. It's so smooth. Good.
Okay, I'll definitely look into it.
Please do.
And then I did a single infusion for 90 minutes at 152. I had 2 hop charges, one at 60 minutes of Columbus, and that was just under an ounce. And then I did my last one at 5 minutes left in the boil of a half ounce of Centennial. So Brian Char pretty much nailed it with the hops there. So I was really, and I tasted that rubberness. I didn't know what I was tasting, but I was like, there's something weird about it. I don't know. I just chalked it up to the roasted barley and the chocolate. Maybe I had too much. I'm still learning the Pico Brew, so I thought maybe I did something with the circulation and all that. Maybe that brought out some astringency. I wasn't really too sure.
Yeah. Well, you had Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll save my John for the afterwards. Go ahead. Sorry.
And then yeast I used with the WLP 090 Super San Diego yeast. Fermented that under controlled fermentation at 64 for 10 days, and then I cold crashed it, and then I had some issues with my kegs, and so I had to bottle condition it and had a few issues. So I'm actually pretty happy with what you guys told me. So and so I'm interested to hear what you guys would say, like based off my grain bill of what maybe I need to tweak of backing it off, maybe taking it by like a half a pound to a quarter pound on the barley and the chocolate. But I'm interested to see what you guys have to say.
I mean, easily, I would put half a pound in like 5 gallons or 10 gallons. But that's me. You know, my palate's different than yours. I would for sure start with reducing that to a quarter pound for the roasted barley and see where you are, because I think that's really your sticking point. I think the chocolate's probably fine. If you can get your hands on that English pale chocolate, that stuff is gold.
Switch that in for the other half of the roasted barley. Put a half of
because you can mix that American chocolate and that pale chocolate, and you can kind of layer your flavors. I know a lot of people making stouts. They'll do that with crystal malt. Mm-hmm. They'll take their crystal edition and they'll break it up between like a 40 and like a 60 or a 75, because you can kind of get that range of sort of mouthfeel, mid palate flavors. Like that. So feel free to play with stuff like that. Feel free. I'm going to allow you, Chris, to play with your own recipe.
That yeast dried it out quite a bit too, I think. And there's not a lot of fruitiness there. You ferment it at a fairly low temperature. I think maybe a little more fruitiness. You could bump up the fermentation temp a little bit, and or play with a different yeast that's going to give it a little more fruitiness. I mean, stick with the American, but that San Diego kind of is made for drying out IPAs, and I don't know, for stouts it's okay, but change out the hops and try something different there.
I think it's a workhorse.
Yeah,
I'll talk to you about it.
Columbus is that's a challenging hop to use anyway.
Columbus is so variable. I'm not a fan of the danky aspect of Columbus, but Columbus is like honestly. Simcoe in that it's Columbus or like Summit even more so, because they're so variable depending on when they get harvested. And a lot of times the homebrew stuff that you get is kind of the dregs that the pros don't like. So that can be an issue with Columbus. I think that I'm also a Pico owner. Love the Pico. Pico, whatever, Pico.
Yeah. You say Pico, though, and we laugh at you.
Through the computer and slap me or something.
If anybody would, she would do it.
I think she would.
Yeah.
But I don't... I don't see. You mentioned something about the astringency maybe being from the Pico. I don't see that. I see that as being purely a recipe issue. And I like with these guys, I would put maybe in a 10-gallon batch of my American Stout, maybe a pound of roasted barley, maybe.
Right.
And that's 10 gallons. So I think going down to like a quarter pound for 2.5. That's
reasonable territory.
That's reasonable. In fact, I've been kind of dropping it, on like normalizing the 10 gallons, more like going to half a pound, because you want to have a little roasted barley, a little black barley goes a long way.
Yeah,
and you can really overdo it, and I think that's where that interaction, especially with the Columbus and that roasted barley, I'm gonna say that's where you're getting a lot of that rubber flavor from.
I agree. What's the ABV on this, Chris?
Just over 7%. OG was 1068 and Final Gravity was 1014.
Damn.
Nice.
Seemed a little beefy there. That's
right.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Do you have any questions for me, preferably, probably, or maybe the other guys too, because they might know a thing or two?
No, I think I'm pretty good with this one.
Okay.
7%.
It kind of makes sense. It's kind of pretty straight to the point. So I'm glad you guys pointed out everything that I was tasting. I just couldn't explain it. I just didn't know what I was tasting. I was like, but there's just something off a little bit, and I don't know what it is.
Man,
that's great.
That is the whole premise of the show. So honestly, I'm very glad that we were able to do that for you and sort of hone it in for you.
Do you have it on the public recipes shared?
Yes, I do.
Cool. What's the name of the brew?
It's called No Stout About It.
No Stout About It.
Yeah, that's almost as good as Don't Pout Stout.
Yeah, our Pico Brew listeners can go out and brew this one too, and change it how they want. So
that's right.
Have some fun.
All right, Chris.
I finished mine.
Cool.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll talk to you. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Oh, damn it! I didn't ask him if he was in a homebrew club. I didn't ask my
Brian.
signature question. What's going on tonight?
I don't know, man.
I had to remind you the first time.
I know.
What's this bonus beer here?
This is the 21st Amendment and Magnolia collab. It's called the Pink and the Green Cucumber and Watermelon IPA.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know where you can get it. I got it in San Leandro because I know the owner of the company, so tra la 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 la.
The Pink and the Green.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, Sully was like, either you're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. Bev, do you want some? Okay. She said no, but she's not gonna get
me.
it.
Cucumber or watermelon.
Well, I don't know why you're going to drink this then. All right, everybody, thanks a lot for tuning in. I really appreciate it. This has been Dr. Homebrew. The month is January. The year is 2020. The time is now, or at least it has just passed, because you just listened to the show. Hopefully by the time this hits the airwaves, the world will still be intact and big babies won't blow us all up. So that's my wish.
This is kind of a waste of a show.
That's right. That's my wish from me to the rest of humanity. And until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Happy New Year.